The Starlight Celebration has returned to Eorzea, and with it comes holiday cheer and beautiful snow to the 3 starter cities and all 5 housing districts, and along with that snow comes possibly my favorite obscure debate in the entire game. Is the Starlight Celebration snow actually rain? So first of all, what am I even talking about? Okay, let's set the scene. For the entire 2 weeks of Starlight Celebration, these cities and housing areas have non-stop, continuous snow. And this snow is a real weather, which fully replaces the normal weather cycle of those areas, meaning you will be completely locked out of anything with a weather dependence that isn't snow until the event is over. Now, there isn't actually a ton that depends on weather in Final Fantasy XIV to start with. The biggest weather-dependent mechanic in the game is definitely fishing, with lots of fish having specific weather conditions, but not many weather-dependent fish even appear in the zones affected by Starlight Snow. Only 6 are actually exclusive to these zones. The only other mechanic that is even really affected at all by the snow is the sightseeing log. For some reason, sightseeing log entries in A Realm Reborn often had very tight time and weather requirements, a feature that was not carried over into later expansions. There's a total of 8 sightseeing log entries between the 3 starter cities, all of which are weather dependent, and that's basically it. So yes, this is very inconvenient, but a few fish and a handful of sightseeing log entries isn't too bad. It's frustrating to get locked out of anything for 2 weeks, but it's really not the end of the world. With one exception. This guy right here, the Raincaller. The level 40 Fisher class quest requires you to deliver 5 of these. It's one thing to lock you out of completing the sightseeing log for 2 weeks, but it is something completely different to lock you out of being able to complete a basic class quest for 2 weeks like that. However, in an act of mercy, the devs have seen fit to make it possible to not only catch Raincallers during the event, but to actually make them available 24/7. Well, that was nice of them. They must have gone in and added snow to the catch table for this one specific fish, just so people couldn't get locked out of the quest for... Well, that's interesting, isn't it? And not a single one of these other 4 fish, none of which are available in Rain, have ever been verifiably, provably caught during Starlight Celebration. If it was just Raincaller, it would be obvious that they just added snow to its personal catch table. But why Storm Dancer? And now begins the great debate. Did they make these 2 fish catchable in the snow for some reason? Or did they do something on the back end to make the Starlight Celebration snow a special type of snow that counts as rain? Honestly, debate is maybe putting too grand a term for this, since it's more like a vague discussion that pops up once a year, but snow equals rain during Starlight Celebration is a pretty old little nugget of wisdom. You can find people saying it on the forums and on Reddit all the way back to 2014, maybe even earlier if you're better at archive digging than I am. And I'll be upfront, I am 100% on Team Rain. The key problem is that this debate is pretty much purely theoretical. First of all, the event is only up for 2 weeks out of the entire year, so the amount of weird rumors and misinformation and just general confusion about how anything works is limitless. While I was doing background research, I found so many posts saying that they had, quote, removed weather restrictions during previous versions of the event, or made all weather fish catchable or something, and it was always just Storm Dancer. Also, there's so little that's actually directly weather dependent in this game at all that there's almost nothing you can actually do to test whether or not the snow during Starlight Celebration is secretly actually rain or not. Until now. Or, well, until 2023. Sea Shanty is a blue mage spell that was added in patch 6.45, and it has a pretty straightforward gimmick. The potency is doubled in rainy weathers like rain, showers, thunderstorms, and, crucially, not snow. So if the snow is secretly acting like rain behind the scenes, we should be able to see that effect on the damage dealt by this spell. There are no training dummies in the 3 starting cities themselves, but before the event started, I tracked down a level 50 dummy in each housing district and gave it a whack in both non-rainy and rainy weather, except for Imperium, which doesn't have rain but does have snow. Then when Starlight came around, I went back to the same dummies and I hit them again. I won't keep you in suspense. You will not be shocked to learn that Imperium, the only zone out of all of these that has naturally occurring snow, the power of Sea Shanty was not boosted. But in the other 4 zones, during the Starlight Snow, the power of Sea Shanty was not boosted. Oh. Well, that's a bit disappointing. But I'm going to be honest, it's also not surprising. While it would have been nice to be able to directly demonstrate that the snow is actually rain like this, there's kind of a second part of the theory. It's very likely that the rain is only acting as snow in Gridania. So this might sound like a stretch, but there's actually a good reason people think this. Gridania's weather, under the surface, is actually very, very weird. I won't get too deep on weather tables. I have a whole other video that explains them more in depth you can watch if you want. But basically every area has a table listing the possible weathers for that area and a bunch of ranges that tell the weather algorithm which one to pick at a given time. And there is something very strange about Gridania's weather table. Rain is listed twice in a row. Nobody knows exactly why this is, but it is a common theory that this helps play a part in whatever is going on in the back end of the spaghetti code to make the Starlight Snow act as rain. So it really shouldn't be a shock that the Sea Shanty test didn't bear fruit since, well, none of those zones were Gridania. So now the question becomes, is there anything weather dependent in Gridania, besides fishing, that we can use to test whether the snow is rain? And the answer is yes. Miraculously, fortuitously, the only one of the 8 sightseeing log entries in the 3 starter cities to be dependent on rainy weather, the Lancers Guild, is located in Gridania. Unfortunately, testing anything with the sightseeing log is a nightmare. It's completely one and done. Once you've completed an entry, you can never repeat it, which means if you've completed the sightseeing log, you need to make an alt to do any testing. On top of that, the Lancers Guild is actually in the back half of the sightseeing log, which is only unlocked when you finish the first 20 entries, 6 of which are in the starter cities. So if you didn't plan carefully, you can find yourself locked out of your own means of testing. Fortunately, I've been planning since June, so I do have an alt with a sightseeing log ready to go. Finding literally anything online about whether or not you can complete this log entry during Starlight is an exercise in futility, so I present to you, on video, verifiable, actual, documentary evidence of the Lancers Guild sightseeing log entry not being completable during Starlight. Guys, I'm starting to worry the snow might actually be snow. Okay, so on the one hand, the Lancers Guild is in Old Gridania. The Jadeite Flood, where Raincallers and Storm Dancers are caught, is in New Gridania. Different zone, maybe different rules. But that's starting to feel like a stretch. Also, the 2 halves of Gridania have identical weather tables, so if this double rain thing is how the snow is acting as rain on the back end, it seems weird that they would have it set up in both zones but only activate it in one, right? And actually, this doubled weather thing isn't even genuinely unique in the first place. Setting aside the fact that every single area in the Shroud has at least one instance of a weather occurring over 2 different ranges, which is clearly an intentional design choice, there's actually another area in the game where the same weather occurs twice over 2 consecutive ranges like in Gridania. It's the mist. So what possible benefit is there to having fair skies doubled like this? I mean, if we're going by similar logic to the snow is rain theory, you should be able to catch Twitchbeard during Starlight if this is the case, right? Since Twitchbeard is caught in fair skies? It's hard to prove a negative, but nobody has ever caught Twitchbeard in Starlight, and people have tried very hard. And anyway, Twitchbeard was added to the game like a full 6 months after the mist was added. Like, it wasn't there to start. Like, that would be a really weird thing to pre-plan for, right? So on that note, why are these 2 zones like this anyway? That's really bizarre, isn't it? Like, this doesn't seem to be for anything specific, so why is it like this? Is this just a mistake? This seems like a really weird mistake to make. Does anybody actually have any ideas for why this might be the case? I have nothing. Anyway, I digress. The problem at the heart of all of this hasn't changed. Is there anything that we can check in New Gridania specifically that will tell us whether or not it is currently raining? Even the smallest, tiniest thing. Just literally anything. And there you have it. Honestly, I've been pretty firmly convinced. As fun as an idea as it was, I genuinely do not believe that the Starlight Celebration snow is actually acting as rain. Snow has just been added as a viable catch weather for Raincaller, and for some unknown reason, also Storm Dancer. Maybe because they share the same fishing hole, they couldn't make the change for Raincallers without affecting the entire pool or something. It's kind of a boring conclusion, but sometimes that's just how life shakes out. And of course, we can't really be 100% sure. Maybe someday they'll add another random skill or blue mage spell or item or something else will come along and throw this whole thing wide open, and I'll look like a huge idiot. And honestly, I'm fine with that, as long as we can inject a little fun whimsy back into the world. But now here's another fun little question. How do you actually explain this? It's kind of complicated, isn't it? The snow blocks everything weather related except for two specific fish in one fishing hole. If it was just Raincallers, that would be one thing. Storm Dancer makes it all weird. For fishing, it's honestly pretty easy to explain by saying that the snow counts as rain. But then there's the Lancers Guild sightseeing log entry. Originally, I was actually going to suggest maybe the sightseeing log is so niche, I'm comfortable ignoring and just saying, as a general rule of thumb, snow equals rain is good enough. But then I actually hung around that spot for like 5 minutes when the sightseeing log entry was active, and I saw 2 separate people fail the log entry, so it's clearly not that niche. Probably the most accurate general way I can think of to phrase it is, the Starlight Snow blocks all weather-dependent mechanics, but they made rain-dependent fish in those areas catchable in snow. Bit of a mouthful. Still though, I expect that snow equals rain thing to stick around. It's pithy, it's memorable, and it's just barely not wrong enough to matter to most people. And I mean, you know, maybe it actually is right. Could be. But as far as I'm concerned, that's not looking super likely. Merry Starlight! If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel where I have some other weird deep dives on stuff like the weather algorithm and fishing. You can also follow me on Twitch where I stream kind of irregularly, and on Blue Sky where you can read my unfiltered thoughts about traffic jams and office work. Have a nice day!